So how do you feel?
I'm about to vomit.
It's our driving test today. So are Hawaii drivers getting worse? I've been driving in Hawaii for over 20 years and I have to say it's kind of hard to tell. But a recent survey shows that driver courtesy is on the decline in Hawaii. In other words, the aunties and uncles aren't giving the shaka or the wave. So I want to talk about what I noticed recently on Hawaii's roads, particularly on the island of Oahu, and provide some general advice, some friendly advice for anyone looking to drive here. And my wife will be back in like 15 or 20 minutes, hopefully with good news. And let me know what you think about Hawaii drivers in the comments below. I know plenty of people got plenty of stuff to say.
Hello from Hawaii.
All right, so first I want to go over the top 5 complaints that were cited in the survey. Drivers who signal late or not at all, weaving in and out of traffic, tailgating, not allowing others to merge, and talking on cell phones while driving. Now, when it comes to drivers signaling late or not at all, I will say that I am guilty of signaling too late. That was one of the things that when I took my driver's test, not here, but in Kaneohe, I got marked down for that because I didn't turn my blinker on quick enough. And I guess it was just out of habit because I'm so familiar with those roads. But here, definitely, there is not a lot of blinker going on and just a lot of merging of people. I'm not sure if it's just because people are lazy or they're in a rush or they just don't see the car, but it's something that I've tried to teach my wife as I've been teaching her how to drive. You gotta signal because you can't expect people to read your minds. Now let's talk about weaving in and out of traffic. This is something absolutely Hawaii drivers, a lot of Hawaii drivers, I'm ashamed to say, are guilty of. And I get it, you know, left lane is for passing, right lane is a slow lane. But it seems like a lot of people tend to be in a rush. But you know, you don't really have to rush if you just leave on time or a little bit early. When I was learning how to drive, my dad would always tell me, no sense weave. I mean, watch, we're gonna pass these guys when we get down the hill and to the next traffic light. I mean, it happens a lot on Like. People are going through the tunnel, blazing through, going down real fast, and then we all get caught at the same light anyway. But I guess some people feel the need to go fast and they're impatient. All right, now let's talk about tailgating because absolutely, I agree. We have a lot of tailgating here. I used to be one of those drivers when I was a lot younger, but kind of just, what is the point? It's not like the car is gonna go any faster or I'm gonna get them to move out of my way. And to be honest, if it wasn't a car and let's say you were trying to walk behind someone, you wouldn't walk that close. And being tailgated does not feel good. By the way, I'm trying to look for a bench that has no flies. I don't know if I'm ever gonna find one. I might just have to sit out by the basketball courts. And let's talk about the 4th complaint, which is not letting others merge. Now, I think in general, Hawaii is actually fairly good at this. Most people understand the whole idea of this lane goes one car, this lane goes the other. You know, it's like a zipper, right? You merge, you go every other car. Mainland style, definitely not. They won't let you in. You gotta kind of like squeeze your way in and kind of be a little bit more aggressive. But in Hawaii, they generally will let you go. The worst thing you could do though is not be ready for that weave, that zipper, that every other, and then they're just like, okay, forget this guy. I'm just gonna go, and that usually causes problems. Well, at least there's no flies here, but it is really bright. But I will say that this may not necessarily be all the responsibility of the drivers. If you're familiar with Hawaii's on and off ramps, some of them are so poorly designed. I don't know what they were thinking back in the day. I mean, if you see the way that the on ramps come before the off ramps on pretty much every freeway exit here on Oahu, I don't know why they do that. All right, it's starting to get too hot. All right, so let's talk about cell phones. And I would say that's a huge problem. Everyone sees it with other drivers. And I thought that they were gonna crack down on that. I wish people wouldn't do it because it is extremely dangerous. I mean, when you're driving, there's so many things you gotta pay attention to. How can you look at a device in your hand that's swiping and all this stuff? I mean, you have a huge piece of machinery that you're controlling, and if you're not paying attention, it could potentially kill someone. All right, I don't think I'm ever gonna get rid of those flies. These flies are very smart, they know. But I'd say in general, driving courtesy, yeah, I can agree with the findings of that survey. All right, now some just general common sense advice for driving in Hawaii. The first is, brah, no need rush. We're on an island. Okay, the speed limits are not like on the mainland where you can rip 70, 75 easy on the back roads. I mean, I've done that when I drove cross country and it's nice, but there's so many traffic lights and cars and people, and I get it. I got 2 kids and I know that, you know, it's hard sometimes to plan ahead. You leave late and everybody's in a rush, but plan ahead, leave a little bit earlier. That way you're not in a rush and you can think clearer and you're not making certain driving moves that you probably wouldn't make if you weren't in a rush. Next thing is let the speeders go. Okay, let the guys who like drive fast, just let them go and let them go in the left lane. I used to be one of those faster drivers. 8 or 9 years ago, I got a ticket. I know, sounds bad, but I got a speeding ticket and it's my fault, it's my fault. And ever since then, I just decided, okay, yeah, it's not worth it. But let the speeders go. Just let them go ahead and go around you. They're gonna go in their left lane. The worst thing you can do is try to teach them a lesson because they're just gonna cut around you and weave around you. So just let them go fast, and like my dad used to say, we'll catch them at the bottom of the hill by the light. And the third thing is don't forget to shaka and wave. Just say thank you. I mean, it's one of the things that makes, I think, Hawaii very unique in that sense. But just throw up a quick shaka or just a quick wave. I try to do that whenever cars let me merge because, yeah, it is a nice thing to say. It's a thank you. And in reading the findings of that survey, they said that people like it. The majority of people like it when they're complimented or thanked for letting other people in. So I think most people like being acknowledged. It's just, we gotta work on doing it a little bit more. Use your blinkers. We're not psychic. I cannot read your mind. Nobody can read your mind. Sometimes I can kind of tell if a car wants to merge, and that's just like driver sense. And when it comes to merging, if someone is putting on their blinker and they want to merge, I don't mind letting them in. What's worse is if they don't have their blinker and then try to bully their way into the lane. I wish that they would realize all you gotta do is throw a blinker on. That's okay. And last tip, watch out for pedestrians and bikers, especially in downtown. We got a lot of bikers, a lot of bike lanes here. And it's taken some people some time to get used to that. For me, absolutely, it took me a while to get used to that because they took out some lanes just to have bike lanes. And so it's harder to make some turns. You just gotta be careful about the pedestrians and the bikers, especially the pedestrians and bikers that kind of go rogue. They cross the middle of the street, jaywalk and all that. You just gotta be careful for them. Again, no need speed, don't have to go fast. Just be wary of them because they're gonna pop off the sidewalk and you really don't want to hit them. Oh, I can see, can I do it? Oh. Oh. Okay, that's about it. That's all I can do. All right, so just want to wrap this up while waiting for my wife to come back. I recently read this book called Surrounded by Narcissists. And in the book, it talks about how we're kind of becoming more and more narcissistic as a society and a culture. But there's just one part of the book that I thought was really interesting that was related to cars. It talked about how over time, the author had noted that car designs looked more and more aggressive. 80s and 90s, maybe even before that, but really the 80s and 90s, some of the most popular cars, they looked kind of friendly. Where the headlights were designed and the front grille, it just, it was like neutral, right? But then over time, cars have been designed more and more to look aggressive and mean. And now I think when people buy cars, they tend to find cars that are big and maybe mean, and that carries towards the road. And he asked why all this aggressive behavior, why all this aggression on the road? Why do we like big cars that make us tougher? And of course there's safety issues, and I understand that. But what I think is interesting is that on the road, we've become less and less friendly. It's harder to let people merge because maybe you've been burned too many times. Maybe someone cut you off and yeah, you're just like, okay, forget it already. I'm tired of being a nice guy. So it's important, especially here in Hawaii. We drive with Aloha. That means something, to me at least. And I think it means a lot to a lot of other people. I also think it's very interesting when it comes to surveys, and maybe sometimes the things that we complain about the most, it's just projections of maybe a little bit of who we are. So maybe the people that are complaining that others don't use their blinker, or others are driving with their cell phones, or others are tailgating. Maybe they themselves are also doing that, or are guilty of doing that at times. And it's this self-projection that I think is very important to look at for us. I think oftentimes as locals, we point out the flaws in others. Unfortunately, that's usually visitors or people who just moved here. But I think oftentimes those things that we say are just projections of ourselves. Maybe some of the things that we don't like about ourselves. Maybe some of the things that we do that irritate others, but we just don't want to be called out for it. So I think it's important to acknowledge that yeah, maybe if we are in a decline of driver courtesy, it's great that we found that out, but I think it's also more important that we start doing something about it. If we want people to use their blinker, we should do it. If we want people to wave, we should also wave. And I think it's important to remember that we can be that change. And maybe you don't see anybody do it, but hey, you could be that person who waves for somebody else, and maybe they'll start doing it. And then we can get back to what we used to do, which according to the survey, we had a high driver courtesy approval rating just 10 years ago. But be safe out there if you do drive in Hawaii. There's a very interesting mix of drivers here. You got local drivers, but you also have tourists, and you also have people with international licenses driving on the road. And of course, we all know there's a lot of people with no insurance, no safety check. You see them driving around, but just be careful. The goal of driving is not who gets there the fastest. It's not even who gets there in the most amount of style. I try to explain to my wife that the goal of driving is just to get to where you got to get to safely. And we all win. We all win when that happens. So hopefully people remember that and drive with a little bit more aloha. But again, let me know what you think about Hawaii drivers in the comments below. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot to say about them. So with that, thanks for watching, and aloha.